My name is Chille DeCastro, and if you stick with me here for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to run down exactly how we lost our rights. And what I'm talking about is our Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments of the Constitution. The way we lost our liberty, the way we lost our due process, the way we lost our freedom in this country. It's all going to end up going through TerryVsOhio. It's all going to end up going through TerryVsOhio. But what I'm going to teach you today is the etymology, the history of exactly how we lost our rights and exactly why we must change this system. The system will not work. It will never work. This system will not work because it's based on jurisprudence and stare decisis, meaning that all case law is based on previous case law. And the cases previous years are far more authoritarian and racist than anything you could possibly even understand. Let me give you the etymology. So if you take a look, there's our prison system today. And the question that I always ask people is, do you think we became more criminal in 1968 when TerryVsOhio happens? Do you think we became more criminal? No. The answer is no. The government created laws that would arrest people. And predominantly the reason they did it was because of the Civil Rights era. This is why the government created the Terry laws that allowed police to run up and grab you. They were actually created by the unelected Supreme Court. We're going to talk about that. But first, the etymology of how we got to TerryVsOhio is the most important part. We have an unelected Supreme Court. There's the first problem right there. We have an unelected Supreme Court. It all goes downhill from there. And the reason why this is such a problem is because the unelected Supreme Court are in charge of our natural rights. When I say natural rights, I'm really talking about your right to life. And this is John Locke, Montesquieu, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau here. And your right to life is supposed to be defended by 9 appointed Christian fundamentalists or white Protestants or white supremacists or members of the KKK. I'm really not joking. There's been 100 Supreme Court personnel. A lot of them have been white supremacists or members of the KKK. I wish this wasn't true. I wish this was something I was making up. So now as I move forward in time, in Martin versus Hunter's Lacey, we can go into Marbury versus Madison where the Supreme Court bastardizes the Constitution and they take the power for themselves. But I want to get quickly to Terry as quick as I can. But I want you to understand the Supreme Court. In Martin versus Hunter's Lacey, the overall determination, just so you know, is that they're the only ones that can hear cases about our civil liberties. These unelected 9 men are the only people who can hear cases about our Bill of Rights. Your court in your town cannot hear a case about your civil liberties. You have to file a federal lawsuit because the only people who can hear cases about your constitutional rights are these unelected 9 white men. And then they threw in some women, and 2 of the 3 are horrifically terrible. So now we move forward, and when we criminalize a chemical, we don't have a prison system in America. There's no real industrial criminal system in America, a prison system in America, until we criminalize alcohol from 1920 to 1933. And then that's when we build a prison system, because we're not going to lynch all the Irish, all the Italians, and most of all the cops. The police are the biggest contributors to alcohol prohibition. They're the biggest contributors. They're either the muscle for the gangs, they're either the organization for the gangs, for Capone and Lucky Luciano, or they are the gang. They are the gang. We know this because Roy Olmsted gets caught, lieutenant in Seattle, bootlegging alcohol between Seattle and Canada, and he goes to prison, and his unjust conviction is upheld by a horrible William Hart Taft. I hate to be so negative, he's just a horrible person. And so now, in Carroll versus the United States, a 1925 case based on prohibition, the Supreme Court is going to create exigent circumstances. And what do I mean by exigent circumstances? I mean that when they're chasing down the Carrolls, I'll zoom in. When they're chasing down the Carrolls, they have to grab them because there could be a loss of life because alcohol's poison. The FBI is poisoning it. And so when the exigent circumstances clause is born, this is based on the police being in hot pursuit of you. I don't want police in hot pursuit of Americans or anybody anymore. I want it to be filmed. I no longer want pursuits to go on at all whatsoever. I don't want police pursuing anybody. I want to film the bad people and get them out of the streets. The third reason is to seize evidence. And this is based purely on alcohol being able to be dumped out. And you can't let them get away with dumping out alcohol. You have to punish them. This is what the Supreme Court is about. The unelected body that we do not vote for. We vote for the president, we vote for Congress. We didn't vote for Congress till the 17th Amendment in 1913. And then we voted for senators. So when they create the exigent circumstances on alcohol, that fundamentally ruins our country forever. Our country is ruined forever right here because we build an industrial prison complex that's based on the violence of the alcohol gangs. And why is the alcohol gang so vicious and rough? Because the police are involved. I'm not kidding. Read the Wickersham Commission. The reason why the alcohol gangs are so disgusting is because of the police. The Wickersham Commission is not just one volume. It's like 23 or 24 volumes. It's like reading 6 editions of War and Peace. You can only scan it. You can't read the whole Wickersham. But the reason why is because it goes into deep, deep, deep understanding that the police have ruined our country. And they continue to ruin our country. They enforce things that are completely unjust, like exigent circumstances. We don't need you raiding people's houses. We don't need, if there's someone being kidnapped or something like that, loss of life, but this is based on alcohol. And alcohol is being poisoned by who in 1925? By J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI. That's who's poisoning the alcohol bottles in the barrels. It's J. Edgar Hoover. And the feds, because they can't get a handle on alcohol. They can't get it because they just don't get that you can't prohibit anything from Americans. It doesn't work. How's it going now trying to mandate things to people in the United States of America? How's that going? Are we on the verge of a civil war? I think so. So now we have the industrial prison complex built right here based on alcohol and based on how violent the alcohol gangs are. And like I said, the gangs are full of cops. So now, because the exigent circumstances clause has been born, when Harry Anslinger inherits his father-in-law's fortune, Andrew Mellon is the Secretary of Treasury. When he inherits his fortune, and he's the head of the Federal Narcotics Agency, this man right here, what he does, he then goes after marijuana like white on rice, like stink on poop, you name it. He went after criminalizing cannabis and changing the name to marijuana because when the Marijuana Tax Act passes in 1937, the same year that it passes, Andrew Mellon dies and he becomes the heir to the throne. $19 million he dies with in like 1970 or something like that, 69. And so now that he's going to go after criminalizing marijuana, the exigent circumstances clause is going to be attached to marijuana. The same stuff most of us smoke now. Half of people smoke marijuana openly. Admit it. So then in the 1961 convention on narcotics of drugs, Harry gets the World Health Organization to come in and say that marijuana will turn your kid into an axe murderer. It'll make you a feeble-minded, unconscionable killer. And the World Health Organization comes in and chimes in on that. And you wonder why people don't trust them. What about the FDA? Did the FDA help criminalize marijuana? Yes, they did. The FDA tried to criminalize marijuana through this guy, Warren Campbell, for years and years and years. Always trying to criminalize marijuana. And for what? For big business, for the Standard Oil fossil fuel business. It has nothing to do with our freedom. But now that they can criminalize a chemical, alcohol, and they can lock up millions and millions of people can die. I mean, millions of people died from the alcohol game. And tens and hundreds of thousands were locked up. And so now right here at the single convention on narcotics drugs, which Harry Anslinger hosts in Manhattan, he hosts it. And then he gets the World Health Organization to come in and say that the marijuana will turn your kid into an axe murderer. You still trust them? In 1963, in Kerr versus California, the cops just take the key and walk into the Kerr's house based on exigent circumstances. What's the exigent circumstances? The Kerrs are marijuana dealers. They use common law to knock, announce, and just go running in the house. And the Supreme Court says that's great. So now the cops today can knock on your door, announce, and run in. We're using jurisprudence. The jurisprudence the stare decisis starts in Carroll versus United States, where the exigent circumstances clause is born. That's in 1925 based on alcohol. And now in 1963, based on marijuana, an exigent circumstances, they can just knock on your door and run in the house and violate all your rights. So like I said, if you allow them to force medication on you or force you to have a baby, the next step is what? Once your rights are gone, they're gone. You can buy a bottle of alcohol on every single corner in America today. You can buy marijuana on almost every corner store in America today, but our rights are gone. The police can still just knock on your door and come running in. 100,000 knock and announce raids a year. 100,000. Over 20,000 are no-knock raids. And what is prohibition based on? What is prohibition based on? Conservatism. The Temperance Society. In 1920, actually, just so you know, prohibition is passed in 1919. It doesn't go into effect till 1920. However, the Temperance Society, a conservative movement, started in 1820. And so by the time they had pushed so hard to criminalize alcohol here in 1920, they pushed so hard and so long, hey, you know what? We'll do absolutely anything to you. It doesn't matter what happens to you. We've been fighting to criminalize alcohol for 100 years. We'll put you in a dungeon. We'll go through alcohol gangs. We'll murder tens of thousands. 1 out of 7 people in America will be injured or killed by the alcohol gangs. It's the most violent time. And all the prisons now are going to be based on how violent the alcohol gangs are. And policing tactics after the war, after the Wickersham Commission from August Vollmer are now based on military operations in the United States of America. This is of how we lost our rights and how we live in an absolute police state. So now here, right here, when the industrial prison complex is actually developed, right there, now we have a prison complex. Back here, black people, after we built prisons in the South, and I say we because you have to take some responsibility, right here, when the white people built prisons in the South to re-arrest their slave because you got slavery in your Freedom Amendment, if you just get arrested and then he goes back to being a slave, didn't happen very much. Didn't happen very much. Most of the time they went back to being a slave or they got lynched. The white prison population doesn't drop until after the exigent circumstance is John Terry in Terry versus Ohio. Remember the exigent circumstances, the 3 parts of exigent. 1, if there's going to be a loss of life. 2, if the cops are in hot pursuit. Or 3, if they're going to seize evidence before you destroy it. That means your rights can be superseded. Your rights can be gone around by the government. What the hell are you talking about? We have rights against the government, so you can't go around our rights. You can't create the exigent circumstances clause so you can just go around our rights for police action. Police action is government action. It's unconstitutional. It should not be happening. I don't care if police are in hot pursuit. I don't give a shit. I don't want them in hot pursuit of people. I don't want police anymore. I want a new organization based on security and education, not this garbage. And so here, when we create the exigent circumstances, the cops can just violate your rights if the circumstances are exigent. Well then, right here, in 1963, John Terry standing on the side of the road, Martin McFadden sees him and says, it's exigent. I'm sure he's gonna do a stick up. And then because he has a gun on him, then Martin McFadden's a super cop. And so now the exigent circumstances clause is applied to all of us at all times, every day, always. Because when Martin McFadden ran up and grabbed John Terry and he had a gun, well then Martin McFadden must have been a super cop. So they're all super cops. And every circumstance is exigent. The Supreme Court, what they do in the trial, which is on my YouTube page, they try to make it about officer safety. I actually laid out where Martin McFadden grabbed John Terry. It was not about officer safety. This is purely about racism and the civil rights movement. This is about the white supremacist court wanting to be able to run up and grab black people and disarm them, because right after Terry v. Ohio passes, they then pass the Gun Control Act. I'm going to get to that. So Terry v. Ohio, they go to the trial. We talked about the 4th Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their person against unreasonable searches and seizures. Well, Martin McFadden running and grabbing John Terry, that's against unreasonable searches and seizures. You can't just run up and grab people, bro. The white supremacists, they then changed our Constitution. Officer safety is now the standard. It is now your Bill of Rights. Officer safety is the most important thing. And how do you know that? Because then every law that spawns from Terry is a death law based on officer safety. You had a right to life, not if officer safety is in question. You had a right to run away from police. Nope, not if they're afraid. They can shoot you as you run away. What about sitting in your house? Nope, they can kick your door down if they're afraid that you're going to hurt them while you're in your house. I swear to God, that's what it says. Wilson versus Arkansas, the cops are going to raid your house. For what? Why are cops raiding your house? Do you have kidnapped children in there? Why are police raiding your house? How many kidnapped children are in there? No, they're raiding your house for chemicals. Because the war on drugs from Richard Nixon. And we know Richard Nixon lied. It was all about arresting black people and hippies. He admitted it. He said it himself. He said that John Ehrlichman, Ehrlichman, he said Richard Nixon wanted to arrest black people and hippies. He said blacks and hippies. And so he created the war on drugs. We know that. Why are we still living in this nightmare? This idea that we can criminalize chemicals. So then Wilson versus Arkansas, it says the police cannot no-knock raid your home unless it's for officer safety. And they need to raid your home. They need to raid your home. How many kidnapped people do you have in there? How many people have you cut into pieces? Why do they need to raid your home? We live in a digital era. Why can't they film your home? Why can't they film you? And why do we have to get people for drugs? Leave them alone. Leave them alone. They say they can no-knock raid your home based on their safety. And that's an extension of Terry versus Ohio. So let's get into Terry just a little bit. You have the right to be securing your person against unreasonable searches and seizures, but now the exigent circumstance clause attaches to you. When the police officer sees you on the street, if he's reasonably suspicious of you, that becomes an exigent circumstance because you could be armed. And so he has to grab you right away. How many videos am I posting where the cops are running up and just grabbing people right away? No words, just grabbing people. That's Terry. That's not walking while black. Wren versus United States says cops can pull you over if they're suspicious of your car. That's an extension of Terry. These are all Terry. These are all Terry. These are all Terry. He's Terry. Eric Garner's Terry. Elijah McClain was Terry. Terrence Crutcher was Terry. Sandra Bland was a Terry stop. James Boyd was Terry. Brandon Ellingson was Terry. I'm gonna cry. I gotta stop. Ronald Green was Terry. Jesus Christ. So we have got to get back to a place where when we see people get murdered by police, it's not legal. We got to get to a place where when you see people getting murdered on camera, it's not legal. It's illegal to kill people. It's illegal for cops to kill people. Why aren't you as mad as me? Why aren't you as fired up as me? How many people have you recruited and told them, I saw a graphic, I saw an image, take a screenshot of the video. I saw a graphic, it was plain as day. After Terry versus Ohio, everybody went to prison and everybody died. And the cops aren't getting prosecuted. This whole thing, the whole court system's a scam. It has to be torn to the ground and redone. So we got 9 people who we don't elect, who are gonna listen to all cases about our civil liberties, but we have thousands and thousands of judges to throw people in dungeons, and these are no longer sweet places. If they ever were. These are now a dungeon where you get raped, where you get beat, where you get held down and raped as a man. That's what happens here. And what'd you do wrong? Cop didn't like you. What are you talking about? Martin McFadden looked over and saw John Terry and said, I don't like him. That's his testimony. William O. Douglas wrote a dissent and said, we're going to a path down to tyranny. Terry v. Ohio allows the police to be the person supporting by oath or affirmation. Let me tell you what I'm talking about specifically. I want to get really into specifics here. So the Fourth Amendment, and read this clear here, right? The Fourth Amendment's the right of the people to be secure in their person against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And this is where it gets really hokey and really crazy for Terry versus Ohio. And no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause. So if a warrant's going to be issued, you had to have broken the law. How can you issue a warrant without a law being broken? So now we actually understand the definition of probable cause is when you have broken the law because a warrant can be issued. And then that's going to be supported by oath or affirmation. So in other words, a warrant's being issued because there's been a law broken, and then here comes the witness supporting by oath or affirmation that you've made them a victim. And then it's going to particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. Particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. And now with the war on drugs, the police are every person in the Fourth Amendment. You see what I'm talking about? So Terry v. Ohio puts reasonable suspicion, replaces that probable cause supported by oath or affirmation. No warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause. Terry changes it to reasonable suspicion. No warrant shall be issued but upon reasonable suspicion. And not supported by oath or affirmation by the victim, supported by oath or affirmation by the cop. He swears he was reasonably suspicious of you, and that's why you had to be put in handcuffs, and that's why you had to be thrown on the ground. That's Terry versus Ohio. I'm not kidding. It completely and fundamentally changes the Fourth Amendment. That the police can grab you based on their suspicion, arrest you, and the Supreme Court's going to call it detained, but it's arrested. Put you in handcuffs, torture you, question you while being tortured. And it's all constitutional because of Terry versus Ohio. And Terry versus Ohio is based on the stare decisis of the common law of Kerr versus California. That's based on the bad World Health Organization. That's based on the bad ruling of Carroll versus United States, where the government decides they can go around your rights. The rights are intended to defend us from the government. I'm one man. This is my last day in this office. I won't be back in this office again. I do have a badass wall graphic coming out. Wait till you see it. If we don't overturn Terry, we're screwed. You have to recruit some people. I'm not reaching enough people. You have to recruit some people. You have to go to your influencers. You have to go to the people that you adore, the people that you love, the people who you follow who make videos that are funny or cute or intense like the ones I make. You have to go to your people. You need more people. We need more people. That's it. I'm out of here, guys. This was my last broadcast from here. It's been a good run. Things change. This changed. So, thanks for the time. I don't really have much else. There's the etymology of how we lost our rights. It's all based on chemicals. It's all based on power, being able, the Temperance Society, a conservative movement for 100 years. It's based on that. That's what it's based on. This builds the industrial prison complex, then the for-profit prison complex down here for Ronald Reagan, Joe Biden's crime bill. Every president is complicit. I'm just blabbing. Listen, tell your friends, please recruit someone. Recruit someone. This is the only message I have. I won't do any other messaging. I'm not interested in anything else. I don't mean to be rough, it just is what it is. We have to elect the Supreme Court and overturn Terry. You think this is going to be a cakewalk? Buck up. All right? Thanks for your time. Later.